for the medium that is virtual reality. Thank you very much for coming to another wonderful NYVR event. Been kicking it since 2013. So how many newbies are in the house?
How many people have been to more than 50?
And how many people were actually at an NYVR prior to 2016?
Including 16?
Yeah. I know Gary. Couple, yeah, definitely. Awesome. Okay. So if you have not been here before, NYVR's mission statement is simply to grow and support the XR community in New York City. So we're going to keep on doing that. I want to thank the Glimpse Group for getting us this space, which is really amazing and helpful. It allows me to program the whole year's worth of events in a wonderful venue. So it's really awesome that we can make this happen. And also shout out to our volunteers, Anthony, Jean, Steve. Jordan's actually down in Florida at the beach. Yeah, I'm a little jealous about that.
I volunteer for that.
But thank you, everyone. And a reminder, so we do record, but we do live stream, and then if you go to the link, all of the past events are there since really all the post-COVID shows. And the link to it is in the description on the meetup page. So if you can't get here, also for future months, just go to that link. And thanks to Jimmy, who basically facilitates that, another one of our volunteers. If you haven't been here before, NYVR runs something called the Collaboration Group. Essentially, it's designed to help members meet like-minded folks and start creating portfolio pieces. So essentially how it works is if you're looking to get into the industry and you just want to work on a project with other developers and maybe you don't have all the skill sets, I basically take your name, take your skill set, and I'll team you up in the future with other people. We have one project right now that is actually looking to build a POC to help people on the autism spectrum deal with very high intensity environments. Right now we actually have a stacked team, but if that topic resonates with you and you'd like to get involved with it, hit me up afterwards. If you'd like to also be put on another team, just come up after the presentations and I'll take your info. Always looking for other presenters and any XR startups in the space for future presenters. So if you know anyone, definitely send them my way. Our wonderful other community XR group, the XR Guild, their next event is targeting April. They haven't finalized their date yet, but the announcement should be coming. There's a couple XR Guild folks here also. Next, March 23rd, the Polys are being held. Ben presented at the last event. I'm sure he's in the last minute throes of putting the event together, but definitely put this on your radar and check it out. I'll be there in person, looking forward to it. Also for folks that are familiar with NYVR, annually we try and do an Art in VR Expo. This is essentially just a specialty event where we try and fill this room with people working, creating art-related VR in the immersive space. So it's kind of wide. I just like really cool stuff to see. So if you're working on a project, you'd like to share it, get feedback. If you know somebody who has something cool, even if it's just a game concept, whatever it is, I'd love new faces and new content for the community to check out. For that event, I think it's going to be in May. We won't have the normal format of presentations. You just come and see a lot of cool stuff. Kevin and Peter, raise your hands. They're over there. They are helping to facilitate a Niantic 8-Ball workshop at NYIT on April 19th. Check them out over there after the event to get information. And they'll also put a little post on the discussion board for the meetup for NYVR. So if you need to get the info, you can get it from there. Another thing that I'd like to do is I'd like to get community feedback on what is your favorite VR experience. So if you've tried something recently that you thought was super cool, if you could scan this right now and just put it into the system, I'll create I'll add it to my running list, and it essentially looks like this. If you want to take a picture of this, this is great thing. I guess you could classify it as homework when you're a chief creative officer of an organization.
Yeah, DJ, you should put a percent number of how many deals you've done, and
Yep.
keep it to your ongoing track. So kind of we'll see if that kind of number can people throw good ideas at you before you can get them.
Well, all of them I've done. So,
Have you done all of these?
yeah.
I've done my share, but not.
Well, some of them are like enterprising stuff, but yeah, pretty much. And then, thanks to Steve, we have an awesome LinkedIn page landing where we also share community information. So if you are not part of the LinkedIn page for NYVR, hit that QR code. That's a lot of QR codes. Okay, I think now we can get to our show. So we're squeezing in Nicholas into the lineup tonight. He has a timely activation at Central Park. I'm really excited to learn tonight. It was supposed to end next week, but they were able to extend it until April 16th. Nicholas, why don't you come on up? We got a minute or two for him to talk about the platform, but we're going to have him back in a month or two where he can do a deep dive into the project and we can learn a little bit more.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for squeezing me in. Happy to be here. It's my first time. I feel ridiculous that I didn't know you existed until just a couple weeks ago, but here I am. So I'll try to be super fast. I run a studio called Dirt Empire, the space in Brooklyn. I'm an immersive director. We've made all sorts of augmented reality, virtual reality, projection experiences going on 15 years. We've done things for the United Nations, for the New Yorker, for Beyonce, all different formats and sizes. And this most recent project that just opened 3 weeks ago, well, more February 12th. I don't know if anyone ever went to the original Gates or are familiar with Christo and Jean-Claude, but since their passing, the foundation of Christo and Jean-Claude have made it their mission, according to the foundation director, Vladimir Yabachev, who was my boss and friend and client, to use immersive technologies to bring Christo and Jean-Claude's work into the future and also find opportunities to connect with younger audiences and use immersive tech. So to that end, for the 20th anniversary of the Gates, they commissioned my studio and myself, Dirt Empire, to build 2 augmented reality experiences. This is all of the visual references I have, so I'm just going to point at things and have to use your imagination so you see them in real life. But in Central Park, there is an app called the Gates Augmented Reality, and that lives inside of Bloomberg Connects, which is their exhibits app that connects hundreds of institutions, museums around the world. So we embedded a Unity app inside of Bloomberg Connects, and if you go to 72nd, East 72nd and 5th Ave, you'll see these big towers. They're 8 feet tall. They're scanning stations, and you'll see docents wearing vests that say the Gates on them, and it's basically an outdoor museum exhibit that allows you to revisit the Gates in augmented reality. It opened on February 12th. It was going to end on March 23rd, and they've extended it until the 16th. So it's open all day, daylight hours. If you go during the week, you'll see docents. You just need to make sure you have Bloomberg Connects, lots of battery, most recent version downloaded, and generally it's pretty good, and there are docents there to facilitate. It's augmented reality. It works by itself, but of course, it's finicky, and it's really great to connect with the docents. There's also a retrospective at the Shed, which is in Hudson Yards. It's on 30th between 10th and 11th. And this is unfortunately closing March 23rd, but this is a very in-depth retrospective about all of Christo and Jean-Claude's works in New York and unrealized projects. And it's a phenomenal exhibit. It's very experiential. All the documentaries are projected on the walls. You can see original Gates flat-packed and partially reconstructed. And we made an AR experience that is on a 20-foot table. We took Central Park and put it on a gigantic 20-foot table, and there's bespoke software built in Unity, and the entire table comes to life, and you'll see a full 3D map of Central Park, all 7,000 of the gates laid out accurate to how they were, and then we embedded these incredible 360 pictures that were taken 20 someone made 360s on site, and we found them randomly on the internet, and we embedded them in the AR, and they're really like time capsules for the original experience. And then you can see all the vantage points from which Christo rendered, because he paid for the entire thing himself by making artworks and selling them. It was a huge event for New York City. I think he spent $50 million of his own money to put it on for only 2 weeks. And then it brought, I think, $250 million of economic activity. Now I'm repeating all of their talking points. But that's why they're so excited. And this is one of the reasons why Bloomberg Philanthropies co-sponsored it. The Christo Foundation, they were my client. They were the ones that paid us and hired us to make the AR experiences. And then Bloomberg came along and supported the rest of it and made everything else happen at a very high level. So I'm so excited to be able to share with everyone. Again, you have until the 16th to check out the park, and I'll be back later to talk about it more in depth.
Awesome, thank you so much. So glad we could share that piece. Okay, we are going to get to the main presenters. So we have John, who will be talking about his esports tennis program. Ophir, actually, how many people here have considered making a patent or is a startup? Anybody here? A couple? Okay, for you guys, you have to listen tight because he is going to be talking about his patent system. We have Brennan McTurnan, Glimpse Own. He is seen VR since the 90s, and he's going to share some tidbits from back in the day. I actually wish that we could extend the hour just so he could talk more about what was learned in the past. And then Dave Lobster is going to be talking about his new meditation platform called Brain Candy. One other housekeeping thing. So this QR code I'm going to put up on the screen after each of the presenters. And this is for Q&A. So hit that, put your questions in, and then after the presentations, I'm going to bring everyone back up, and you'll be able to ask questions. You can, if you have any questions for Nicholas also, you can hit that, and his name will be in there. Okay, with that, I'm going to get off. Oh, I'm sorry. One last housekeeping thing. Thanks to Tina. I'm going to make a pre-post event call out. We're going to go to Blaggards and have beer after the event. So if anyone wants to join us, Blaggards is right across the street to the left. Okay, with that, I'm done talking. John, take it away.
Hello everybody, or as they say in my country, good day. I'm from Australia, and I thank DJ very much for flying me in for this very special event. And I'll come back next month if you want to pay for another ticket. So, a little bit about the business. I don't look like a gamer, and 6 months ago I didn't even know what esports was all about, but one learns quickly. So, the business that we've created is around an app which is on the Meta Store, and there are partners called Tennis Esports. And Tennis Esports was created in conjunction with the University of Vienna. And for those of you who have tried, a few of you have already tried it, it simulates tennis pretty well exact. So if you are a rotten tennis player like me, you will be a rotten tennis player on the game as well, except the idea of it is that we have created a package of learning around that. So we've written 40 modules of STEM learning that is designed to take somebody from ground zero, like they've never even put on a VR headset, and take them step by step by step through all the different tennis strokes and modules of play, and it's linked into the game itself. So the idea is that you can do a module of learning, you can then practice that on the VR, and then comes the fun stuff. Our market is schools and colleges, and I'm pretty pleased that my trip to New York was successful, and we have partnered up with the US Tennis Association, Eastern, and we did about we had about 25 people in the room, and normally when you do a presentation like that, there's always 2 or 3 that don't like you and will ask you the nasty questions. But they were wrapped. So we had everybody go through and try the program. They've seen the modules of learning, and they see this as a means of getting more people into tennis. And that's the name of the game. But to make it more exciting, just training people in tennis is not fun for kids. So by partnering up with an esport organiser, we, and those of you, there'll be some here who are young who have played Minecraft and Fortune and Rocket League and all of those games, we partner up with the esport organiser, and the schools can compete. And the schools can compete at various levels. So within the school, they can set up an instant match. So 2 of the classmates can put on the VR headsets and they can have an instant match. We then set up a program that allows the schools to compete against other schools. And the idea is that as we grow the number of schools in the US, and there's about 2,500 schools that we are hoping to capture, they'll be competing against each other. And what's the prize? The prize is that at the end of a season, the top 4 or 10 schools, whatever we decide, will end up having a playoff at the US Open. So the US Open will have physical tennis and it will have an esports competition all the way through. And then it gets better. We're marketing this in Australia, obviously. I just finished at the Australian Open. We were invited, and I'm a very bad tennis player, but we were invited to put on an exhibition there for 2 weeks. We had no idea what we were walking into. And for 14 days, we were on for 12 hours, and we did 6,500 people having a game with the experience. And unfortunately, it means we're back next year because Tennis Australia loved it. But again, just doing that is not what we're about. We're about teaching and we're about competition. That's the name of the game. So there'll be national competitions that run within the country. There'll then be international competitions because through the headset, you can pick an instant match with anybody in the world. Working with Meta's recognised what we're doing, which is great, and they're putting us on their education platform, because one of the most important parts of this is safety for kids. You don't want kids putting on a headset and engaging with people that aren't within a school environment. So we will be a complete student-only environment, and sadly for the students, the headsets will be blocked from going anywhere else. We deal only with Meta-authorised dealers, and they can control what the school wants. So if the school wants other games, we'll allow it, but the students won't be able to do anything separately. So I think here's a little commercial we did.
Get it down again.
Okay. You'll also notice there was one girl who had injured her leg, okay? She was a top player, but she couldn't play normal tennis for nearly a year, but she could play this. And in fact, at the Australian Open as an experience, there was Disability Day, and we had lots of wheelchair and handicapped people who tried it, and it was a great success. You know, the best fun was seeing them with a big smile on their face at the end of it. Very few people put on the headset and have a go and don't go, wow. And that's really the experience we had with everybody. And we're looking forward to to establishing the market in the USA and having the competitions. And I don't know anybody here, if you're at the US Open in August 2026, we'll be there. And if you've got kids, hopefully this will be in one of their schools and they'll be able to compete. And that's really our story. And please don't ask me any technical questions because I can't answer.
Thank you so much, Sean. And I will vouch for it. If you're familiar with 11 table tennis, so good physics, the tennis program has just the same amount of value in the physics, and I think that's such a key piece of the project. All right, let's get to the next thing. Hold on. Okay, so if you have any questions for John, hit this QR code, and then we can bring up Ophir. Come on down.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. My first time to complete a tour of exotic accents. After we had the cool Australian, you have the nasty, thick Israeli accent. Sorry about that. 13 years in the States and still the same thing. I'm a technologist. I'm an entrepreneur. I would say inventor. I have more than 300 patents. Unfortunately, I had to start dealing with patents, not because I like to, because I was forced to. Patents are boring, right? Let me start with, well, what we'll try to cover in the next 95 slides is what are patents in 2025, the bad, the right way, and hopefully a new hope that my company provides. Quick question before we start. Do you have freedom to operate? Anybody? Yes?
What?
No? Exactly, what is that? Great question. Ask yourself, do your company or yourself, do you have patents? If you have, raise your hand. Okay, we have some. Not sure? Good. Last question there. For those that do have patents, how early do you start working on these patents? So raise your hand if you start as early as possible. Wow, nice. Only when you have the time or money, or haven't yet. Good. Okay, let's talk a little bit about what are patents these days, and do they still exist? So yes, in 2024, more than 700,000 patents were filed in the US. More than 300,000 patents were granted. Most industries, the industries that uses patents the most are the semiconductors, that is for more than a generation now. AI and cybersecurity became really strong in 2024. Out of the patents filed in the US, more than 45 are foreign filings, or companies that came outside of the US. Now, why does that all matter? What do all these people have in common? Yeah, I know, stupid question, they all wrote patents. Do you know Hedy Lamarr? Hedy Lamarr, some of us are old enough to remember. She was one of the best actresses back in the 30s, 40s. Not a lot of people know that she actually created a patent back in World War II that tried to help the torpedoes of the US. And this patent, that technological patent, is the basis for nowadays Bluetooth and wireless technology. So basically what I'm trying to say here is that everybody can invent. I wake up in the morning in strong belief that every person out there in the world is an inventor by heart. Now, obviously, most of those inventions, or most of those ideas, are not strong enough to survive, but even more unfortunate is the fact that most of the inventors will not do anything with their ideas. One of the reasons I created SenseIP, my company, is that ever since I was a young kid, I remember myself inventing, drawing things, machines, ideas, and every few months I hear in the news about, hey, a new startup that was brilliant success, And I go to my wife and say, hey, remember I talked about that 4 years ago? And she said, great, genius, and what did you do with it? So now we have an option. You know, Steve Jobs used to say in 2008 when he introduced the first iPhone, one of the first 5 top bullet points he said in that slide, boy, have we patented it. The reason is he knew that patents are important. They still are. But and the bad side of patents is that this is a really pragmatic business. So let's start with the bad things. 78% of the patents that are granted and go to litigation, in this case the PTAB, within the US Patent Office, 78% are invalidated. So you're sure that you have a patent, 78% of the time, if it will be challenged, it will fail. In 2024, I tried to sum only the 5 jury-awarded patent cases, the top 5. This summed to $2.3 billion in penalties. They had more than 4. Okay, here's one more story that I want to, I shouldn't, but I will. I have a friend, he's a team leader in a big software company in the Bay Area. He led a team of 10 PhDs that worked more than a year on developing new strategy for that company. After a year, they started writing the patent about it, and he was so excited that he had to show it to me. Because he was, you know, in my face, I got nasty a little bit and decided to try and show him that his patent doesn't work a lot. 15 minutes later, unfortunately, I was able to show him that almost identical patent to what they wrote was already approved by the patent office 7 years earlier. That's not the bad part. The really bad part is that patent belonged to the same company. So, after they spent 10 years of PhDs researching the brand new technology, they ended up going back to square one. That's something that I want to change. The reason for that, unfortunately, is patent attorneys. For years, we became accustomed with the idea that if we need to do something with our ideas, it's related to patents, we need to get patent attorneys involved. It's expensive, it's time-consuming, so let's delay that, right? When we're looking at what happens in terms of numbers in the USPTO, we already said that granted patents, we have roughly 300,000 a year. Non-provisional applications, new application, roughly 700,000 a year. Provisional patent application, which is a placeholder, it's a, if you will, one higher layer in the pipeline. You would expect 1.5 million, 2 million provisional patent applications. We only have 150,000 of them every year. Again, the reason is patent attorneys. Their business model is basically pay us for billable hours. Well, that doesn't work well for us as entrepreneurs. Our vision in SenseIP is to change all that. We believe that every inventor should have a democratized way to tackle his invention as early as possible. We believe that IP protection should be high quality, fast, and affordable. And it can be done nowadays with AI. What we did so far, before I tell you about the technology in a brief description, we were able to, since 2023, file more than 2,700 provisional patent applications, high customer satisfaction rate, strong, loyal customers. More than 900 companies work with us, and individuals. The solution is fairly simple. Our goal is to make sure that as soon as you have an idea, even if it's a really raw idea, you went to a lunch break, you have just a glimpse of a thought, take that to the test. Go to our website, talk to our chat agent, Leo. Very easy conversation, AI-based. In a few minutes, he will be able to break down your idea into the concepts behind that. And as part of the conversation, be able to validate those concepts. And by validating, I mean you will be shown that, hey, concept number 2, here's a paragraph from a patent that looks very similar. How do you overcome this? What can you make What can you do? What can you change in order to be unique? So this process is not just about filing patent. It's about making your invention unique and ensuring that you have freedom to operate. That curse I showed in the first slide, it's really important. Here's the thing. If I am not protecting my idea with patent and I have a competition, it's a business problem, right? I can overcome that with better marketing, maybe improve the offering a little bit. But if I'm infringing someone else, if I am doing something that is already covered by patent by someone else, I have a legal issue. That's way more dramatic. The $3.4 billion that you saw before, that's only the tip of the iceberg. Having freedom to operate means that from day one, you can freely invest your time and effort in R&D because you know that no one else can claim any infringement. And our process does exactly that. You start with your idea, you concentrate and crystallize your concept, you understand what you're fighting against, you have that clarity, freedom to operate, and with a single button, you file for your patent and finish that initial process with a patent pending. Now, obviously, this is a very long process, right? Patent attorney takes a few weeks of back and forth. It costs you thousands of dollars. Well, with Neo, in our solution, our record so far is 6 minutes.
Wow.
Okay. Obviously, usually it takes a little bit more time, 30 minutes. It all depends on the cycles and the iterations, how many times you try to improve your uniqueness. But still, it's dramatically less than before. The cost, if you don't have any subscription, just come for a one-off, it's very expensive. $200. We want to make sure that the threshold for innovation is very low, that everyone can actually invent. And more importantly, it's not just the patent itself. It's being able to validate your idea. Steve Jobs, I quoted him before, one of the best quotes that I like of him is that more important for a company is to know when to bury and kill an idea or a product than to get it out to the market. If you run your idea at the very beginning, before you wasted R&D resources, time and money, killing the idea is a great solution, and we allow you to do that. So I would thank you for having me. I would recommend everyone to just give it a try. Your first idea without filing is free. If you actually want to file the provisional, everyone here will get a discount. And if you have any questions, I am here around.
Thank you so much. Very valuable info. All right, we'll take some questions for him. We'll bring him back up afterwards. And now we got Mr. Brennan. Come on down.
Thank you. I'll back off here. I've used this system quite a bit, and it's extraordinarily good. He's really just done an amazing job. So DG and I work upstairs, and he keeps hearing me talk about back in my day. He somehow thought that it was a good idea to have a discussion about VR back in the 90s. So my first question is, how many people here were doing VR back in the 90s? Okay, we got a few. How many people were alive back there? Okay, so about half of you were alive. So this is really ancient history that I'm talking about. I promise I won't break into Aramaic or anything like that. I'm going to say this in English, okay? I'm going to talk about 3 projects that I worked on. The first one is how I got into VR to begin with. And it was out of need. It had to do with the PBS series that we were working on at the time. The second one is one that you may have heard about, floating around like the Flying Dutchman of VR systems. And that was a home VR system made by a game company whose name rhymes with Lasbro, who was looking to get that out into the market, and they had a huge investment in it, quite a fascinating project, at least to me, and it was a very interesting thing to work on. That got into the true guts of VR and how that works. And the third project that I'll talk about, which is by no means the last project that I worked on then, is Disney's Ride the Comics, which was done in Disney World at Disney Quest. Anybody take a ride on Ride the Comics, or was that pretty excellent? Back up to you. Great to hear. Okay, so without further ado, the 90s were rife with this hype about VR. You've heard the VR curve, where you get this whole big hype, and then you get this, what do they call it, the valley of despair before you start coming up?
Trough.
What, the trough of despair. The only thing they don't tell you is that if that were a plane and that trough was below ground level, you have roughly the same effect. So VR for consumers in the 90s just stopped at that point. And we had a pretty big gap, about 10 years or so before it picked up. So it's interesting to see what happened then and what's going on now. How did I get into it? I had a motion capture company that my partner Steve Gross and I ran called 3D Creations. We were over on 45th Street. We had a motion capture stage there, and we, through connections, PBS decided that they wanted to create an experimental program called Backyard Safari. They did, I think, 11 episodes of Backyard Safari, and it was centered around this little gnome guy whose name is Crinkle, and they wanted to have him interacting with live people. You know, you think about Muppets, you've got the live actors talking to puppets. This was a very similar sort of idea. And the challenge for us was how were we going to bring these two technologies together. And one of the biggest problems we had was that we had set this up as a pretty interesting system. It was live for the compositing, so we could see what was going on, and then we passed that off to a render once we had the data and put it together in this sort of final output. How do we get that motion capture actor to interact believably with the people on the screen, right? And the number one thing that you need there is eye contact. If I'm talking to you, but I'm talking over here to you, it doesn't look like I'm talking to you, right? So we needed a way to get him to interact with these characters. And at first, naively, I was like, well, let's set a monitor up, and with the motion capture, get up on stage, and we'll set up the footage, and we'll let him look at the monitor. This is motion capture. So if I'm in motion capture suit, and I look over to the monitor to see if I'm looking in the right spot, the motion capture actor looks over the monitor to see if he's looking in the right spot. So it's a self-defeating sort of situation. And in looking at that, we stumbled across this VR headset. This is called virtual eyeglasses. This was one of the few consumer products that was successful in the 90s. And one of the things that made it very interesting for us is that you could open up this face. Normally you have this closed face, but if you opened it, these mirrors were semi-transparent. That meant that you could look out onto the motion capture stage and not trip over the boxes and the props and the things that we had there to make this go. But really importantly, the motion capture actor could see what he was doing in the shot. So, and I vividly remember the first time we tried this out, I was so hopeful, please just look somewhere in the direction of the character. And this was actually the shot that we worked on. We pulled it up, and I said to the motion capture actor, who parenthetically is 2.5 feet taller than Crinkle, I said, could you look in the baby's eyes? And the response was, sure, which eye? And that was the right answer. That was what we were looking for from that. And it turned out to be very, very useful to have this technology in place. That got us into HMD displays. The HMD displays got us into kind of the next pieces of technology that were going along with that. We also had friends in different industries. Chris Gentili and Steve Tice. Chris Gentili is the inventor of the Nintendo Power Glove. He and Tice got together and convinced Hasbro that VR was the thing. Like, this is the 90s hype, and Hasbro was like, okay, we want in on this. And they actually did something really brave, I think. They went ahead and they invested in the development of something that started off called the Toaster as its product name, then became Escape, and eventually became Rush by the time it was ready to go out the door. These guys really did a lot of interesting things to make this happen. It was an extremely ambitious project. Hasbro told these guys, you have 2 years to get this done, and it's going to sell at $199. quite a challenge. And to their credit, one of the first stops they made was at the David Sarnoff Research Center down in Princeton. David Sarnoff might be a familiar name. He's the guy who invented the Vicon camera, the camera that's used for television all over the place. The David Sarnoff Research Center is really RCA research. That's where color television was invented. Okay, that team did an enormously talented job of putting this all together. How do I get into that price range? Well, you got to do a lot of trade-offs, right? One of them is the headset itself. Now, you're not going to put a separate eye into each display at a $200 cost system. So they were looking at, well, how can we make this happen? One of the more clever things they did is to come up with a mirror and lens system to split a single image to two eyes. Yeah, that still meant that it wasn't stereo, but because it was on your head, you were moving your head around, you still had this sense of immersion in terms of what you were doing. And really importantly, that headset cost $65 to make. Wow. This astounding number to do that. My particular involvement was in creating a game called Neuro Zero, which was one of the 4 games that were going to be released with this project. A sword fighting thing. If you're going to do VR, just think of all the great games. They're really simple. Swing at things, chop things up. People love it. People love to break things. People love to chop things. That's my 2 cents for you in terms of making your next VR game. This is, I'll show you this prototype of an advertisement that's going to be made for
I
this.
think the volume might be a little high.
What?
Want to make sure the volume is okay.
Just. You see that little icon there at the end? The way the thing held onto the kid's head was with this foam pad. And these guys were clever enough to cut that out as the negative of the foam pad. So when the kid took the headset off, he had this red imprint of the icon. I think it's just genius. So what happened to this thing? I actually give Hasbro a lot of credit for the decisions that they made. At this point in time, they had spent $45 million developing this system. The price that it was going to go at, they couldn't get it below $499. That's what it was going to sell for. So now they had to look, and this is as we're getting through the 90s now, that hype curve is right. They had to say, okay, we're going to release this as a Christmas product. If I'm going to do that, and I'm Hasbro, I'm not selling 100 of these. I'm not selling 1,000 of these. I have to put out a major amount of money, including about $22 million in advertising, and unknown tens of millions to take a factory and tool it up so that it could go ahead and produce these at massive numbers, right? So they decided that that was just too big a risk for their stockholders, and they decided to stop the project. And like I said, I actually respect that. I think if you've invested that much money, there are a lot of executives who just don't understand sunk costs, and they're going to say, just look, get this out the door. That was not the case with these guys. We were fortunate in that we used the experience from this and some other VR work that we had done to then be invited to make one of the 4 games that were going to be available at, I'm really quiet. You've seen it. Thank God. At Disney Quest. Disney Quest was Disney's interactive theme park, opened in a big building down in Orlando. And they had developed several games to show up in there. One of them was Ride the Comics. Ride the Comics started out being a way of fighting all of the Disney bad guys, and it was done by a group of folks on a nice little rocket ship sort of setup. So this was built out into the atrium. Each of these have 6 seats on them. Each of them was driven by Silicon Graphics Onyx. Each one of those Onyxes was between $250,000 and $500,000. Each one of those systems had a $30,000 graphics card on it, which is completely outclassed by a $600 graphics card nowadays. To give you an idea of what that looked like, how do you deliver to this? This is a kind of an in-depth picture of what the experience was for these folks. While you were waiting online, you had a nice sanitized little crown that you put on. Then you get to your seat in those spaceships that I just showed you. The headset, yes, that is a monitor headset. There's no flat screens in 1995. And this was called Gator Vision because that big, huge nose on it. Now, Gator Vision was, as you can imagine, not light. Surprising. Who could see that coming? But it had these cables that acted as a counterweight. So it was, and Disney knows how to engineer. They did a brilliant job, frankly, engineering this. It was almost weightless, which is saying a lot for a device like that. But it wasn't massless. So when it came to momentum, turning your head very quickly, you got to be a little bit careful, or else it's going to go way off. But again, to their forward thinking, there was a hands-free wand to use to whack on people. And then in the seat, there was the thumper that we used to give you different kind of haptic responses to the system. And I think I have two videos here. One is from the outside, one is from the inside. Let's do this one first. This is a view from outside of people doing this stuff. So you have the folks in there walking away wildly at what's going on. So we have a system. So this is what you can see inside. I'll give you another video of this in just a second. Sorry for the horrible noise. About the space park. Let me go ahead and go after the. So this is the view from inside. Here, what you can see in the headset here. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me? Yeah. This is a view from inside. What you see in the headset. Our little hero will come out. Give you the, hey, let's go and beat up the bad guys. One little side story about this. It wasn't until about 2 months before the release date that the project manager decided to show Roy Disney this thing. Roy is not happy. And he's like, wait a second, you can't have kids beating up on Disney characters, you got in mind? So you notice that these are not the actual Disney characters, but near neighbors, because we had 2 months to swap out all the Disney bad guys for non-Disney bad guys. So there's that pirate scene. And I just want to relate an anecdote here. This was the sickest I had ever made myself by working on a VR system. You have these 6 chairs on this spaceship, and you fly down this elevator shaft, and you're zipping along, and these pirates come up next to you, and you try to knock them to get them out of the way. And I thought that it'd be a good idea to turn my seat sideways in virtual space so that I could see them coming at me. And I lasted for about 30 seconds with the world flying by me one way, the ship going another way, and the bad guys coming third spot. I ripped that Gator Vision off my head, ran out the front door, and sat on the front steps for about 20 minutes trying to control what's going on.
Brandon, do you still have it on GitHub? We can put DJ in there.
So I'll finish, just one last note on that. That was released in 1998. It was supposed to run for 2 years. Disney Quest ran until 2014 when they shut that down. And I'm happy to say that they kept the system up for all 16 years. So it was I consider that a pretty good success. So if you are working on a Quest and you're concerned about something that's not quite working right, and oh my God, I've got to shell out $300 to buy this machine or something like that, just please shed a tear for the virtual pioneers like us who are catching the virtual arrows. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to have Brennan back for a sequel on that. All right, I'm sure there's a million questions you can ask Brennan, so hit that up. And then our last presenter is Mr. David Lobster. Come on down.
This is my third presentation here?
I think so.
Something like that, yeah. two of my other apps. Some recent work I've been doing, I come from a background in animation and visual effects and switched to XR development after going to ITB, and I've been doing that for the last 10 years, and for the last 5 years or so I've been focused on the healthcare space. And with some of you here at the NYVR conference in Sarasota recently. I like that space a lot. VR in healthcare really works. There's a lot of evidence that supports that VR is extremely effective in lots of different ways. And hopefully investments and access manages to meet what's possible in that space at some point. This is my new app. It came out of some work I was doing with a couple of my clients over the last couple of years. That work wound up going into internal R&D at companies that wound up pivoting, and I was like, oh, I have these tools and I've learned these things, and I would like to do something with this. So this is Brain Candy. This is an acronym we've been playing around with. Bioelectric response of activated interconnected nodes and cognitive amplification by neural networks. So figuring out how to explain what this app is and how it works and what it does is sort of an ongoing work in progress. So this is sort of a round two, attempting to explain it. And it's actually really helpful to get feedback from people, because it's like, as they describe it, I'm like, oh yeah, you touched on a subtlety there, and I'm trying to weave that all into explaining this as I go. So yeah, like I said, I used to be an animator. I love doing it. I'm happy it's not my job anymore, but sometimes I make little animations to explain things. So this is a little spot I made for Brain Candy. We'll play.
Brain Candy, a new kind of VR experience. It uses flickering lights, acoustic beats, and spiral patterns to synchronize your brain waves. Use it to relax, focus, energize, and hypnotize. Wash out those distracting thoughts. Snap yourself into the present moment. You have nothing to lose but your mind.
Okay, so I attempted to hit the main points of what this app is about there. And now I'm going to go into some more detail.
Brain Candy.
See? So Brain Candy is in a genre of device and practice called flicker light stimulation. The idea is you use strobe lights in your eyes, and it has interesting effects. So these are some of the studies that have been done with flicker light stimulation, and has been studied for basically since the middle of the last century. Intensifies emotional response to music. 10 Hz strobing creates the most intense patterns. It can alter your state of consciousness. My science advisor, his advisor, recently did a study with a lamp called Lucia light that showed that strobe lights increase thalamocortical hyperconnectivity. And it's sort of, it's like the question then is like, okay, what does that mean? Like, how does that relate to other things? And increased connectivity happens in other situations too, like psychedelics, meditation, like other altered states, also seizures. So you don't want to use this app if you've ever had a seizure, if you know you're epileptic. It's a very small percentage of the population, but it can be unsafe for you. So probably if you're epileptic, you will know already. So this is, there's actually a test called the Altered States Questionnaire, and they measure altered states based on these 5 axes: oceanic boundlessness, visionary restructuralization, anxious ego dissolution, auditory alterations, reduced vigilance. So yeah, this is just a list of different kinds of altered states you can get into, and different people describe the effects of FLS like sort of falling into different categories. It can make you more relaxed, it can make you more energized, it can also make you anxious, like strobing lights kind of freak some people out. And yeah, altered states are not so unusual either. We're going to go get a beer afterwards, and you're going to alter your state. You wake up in the morning, you go to sleep at night. It's like our warnings in the app. In 1997, an episode of Pokemon gave lots of people seizures. Somebody might remember that happening. And lots of guidelines came into play. So there are broadcast guidelines, and there are machines you can get to actually play your content back and see if it's dangerous for people. Lots of video games have warnings. So yeah, just being sensitive to that stuff. So light enters the eye and travels through the thalamus and reaches the visual processing areas of the cortex, and it sort of connects to all the different parts of your brain. So these strobing lights will actually have an effect that some people describe as entrainment, where it's like it will change your brain waves. So meditating will also change your brain waves. Like lots of different things will change your brain waves in specific ways, and these flashing lights will actually get in there and synchronize your different parts of your brain together. So at that magical 10 hertz strobing rate, you will see hallucinations, and nobody's really sure where they come from. They might be in the eye, they might be in the optic nerve, or some part deeper in our brain. Which part, nobody's quite sure. It is an area of research. But beauty is in the eye of the one holding the bead. This is just a little background. So one interesting thing about epilepsy, when they were studying epilepsy early on, that's when they also invented the keto diet. Keto diet's really hot right now. It's actually invented for epileptic children to protect their neurons, and it actually reduces epilepsy. And it's like you might find that on keto diet that it changes your consciousness a little bit and knows you know. There was a big installation, I think it was in London, the Dream Machine, sort of a reprise of the Dream Machine that was designed in the 50s and that William S. Burroughs was attached to. It was a spinning cylinder on a turntable and strobe lights in your eyes, and people had parties and gathered around and saw hallucinations. So Heinrich Kluver was a scientist working in the 20s with synthetic mescaline, and he basically made a taxonomy of different hallucinations that he saw. And these are called Kluver forms, and when people do research into FLS, they sort of describe the intensity of the Kluver forms that you see when you're looking at strobing lights. And actually, I just learned about Purkinje. I Googled that pronunciation, I think it might be right. He also had done a taxonomy of different hallucinations that you see, specifically with strobing lights. So lots of interesting, different shapes. The closer you pay attention to them, the more intense they get. Actually, the 10 hertz strobing effect is related to 10 hertz brainwaves, which are connected to focused attention. So there's actually kind of a feedback effect of the closer you pay attention, the more intense the effect actually is. So these are just a few examples of visuals from Brain Candy. The idea was, it's like making a strobing app in VR is extremely simple. And I wanted to make an app that would be interesting for people who maybe were not interested only in extremely intense strobing. So I have lots of scenes that strobe slower and strobe less, but sort of conjure up these forms that are in your brain. These are some other devices you can try. You can try the Roxeva light at a couple different places in town. There's one on 56th Street called Flolo. You can book a session. The Lucia light is amazing. It's the champagne of strobe lights. Only one person in New York has it, and she's eccentric and is upstate. But yeah, the Lucia light is $30,000. The Roxeva light, I think, is $7,000. The Casina, I think, is anywhere from $400 to $800. So these devices are quite pricey. So part of the impetus for me to want to make Brain Candy was to bring this experience to more people. So there are pros and cons of doing FLS and VR. A pro is you can mix in other imagery. It doesn't just have to be strobing. Possibilities for interaction. It's very accessible. Con is it's less intense. You see pixels. There's a limited field of view. Normally when you do strobe light sessions, you close your eyes and the lights are very bright. So it just completely fills up your entire field of view. We also can't do strobing at a proper 40 hertz, which is a frequency that's actually been in the news lately. You might have seen it. They found that 40 hertz can help get rid of amyloid plaques. going and doing it for an hour a day, which is how much you need to do it for it to have an effect, apparently, is not very pleasant. So my own experience was I first came across strobe lights at a maker fair. Somebody had just basically made their own DIY strobe goggles, and they broke immediately because they weren't made that well. So I made my own. Turns out it's actually very easy. If you know how to do things with Arduinos, you just get a couple LEDs and you tune the frequency and just put them up to your closed eyes. I find the imagery fascinating, and I use it for meditation. And I like to combine it with binaural beats. It's sort of a common combination. Strobe lights and binaural beats goes well together. I made a pretty big, I don't know how many people here ever went to Luxury Escapism. It was a spa that I had in Dumbo for a little bit. We had a water bed with a big strobe light that was adjustable, so you can like turn up and down the intensity. Different people like different intensities. Some people find intense strobing to be too much. Everybody's brain is different. Everybody has different tastes. So some people like to go straight for like the really intense strobing, and some people find it to be extremely unpleasant. So yeah, in terms of brain candy, I didn't want it to take itself too seriously. I also didn't want to have to make any big claims about it and say, here's some strobe lights, see what it does for you. So calling it brain candy was a way to have it take itself less seriously and be a little more fun. Like, here's the thing that I'm gonna try. I'm just gonna like do this thing for my brain. Like, let's see what it is. So yeah, this is a pro of doing it in VR, as all the imagery is stereoscopic. So yeah, if you can cross your eyes, it might be a bit crazy if you can't cross your eyes, but you can see it in VR later. So this is kind of the background of how it was built. So it's one shader, it's sort of a complicated shader. It's built with rings. I take those rings and I put them on 3D cones. So I have anywhere from like 2 to 7 or 8 cones with this shader on it. There's 25 variables. I have an open source library of low frequency oscillators that you can connect in like a node-based way. So you can have an oscillator that creates flashing, and then you can have another oscillator that speeds it up and slows it down. And they synchronize with the audio, and they synchronize with the haptics on the controllers, and it also works great when you plug it into a sub-pack or some other kind of tactile transducer. These are some of the reviews from the store. When I released it, I was like, I don't know if anybody is going to like this or be interested in it, but the reaction has been pretty positive so far, so I feel encouraged to keep working on it. In the future, I want to release packs. So right now, it's a bunch of scenes that are changeable but relatively static. So I want to do things that happen over time, do some more interactive stuff, do some things with voiceover, et cetera, I'd like to allow people to make them easily, which is kind of a big project. So these are some of the things that I want to do. And if you are interested in making candies, the tools are accessible if you're interested in being part of the Git repo. So these are some of the people that helped with the project, with inspiration and support. It wouldn't have happened without the people on this list. Below, if you're interested in cyberdelics generally, the Cyberdelic Nexus is an organization that has a lot of different projects under their umbrella, and they do a lot of events and community outreach. And if you're interested in like more of the hard science of this stuff and the mathematics of consciousness, the Quality Research Institute does some really interesting work too. So how's my time?
You're good.
Okay, so I have another explainer video, or I have a dumb AI video. Which one do you want to watch?
Both.
Both? Okay, I'll just do one more explainer video first.
Welcome to Brain Candy, where science meets sweetness. We blend carefully designed, pulsing, visual patterns, and rhythmic beats to create a delectable field of sensory stimuli. Explore shifting states of consciousness through Brain Candy's kaleidoscope of experiences. From gentle waves of relaxation to streams of crystalline focus, might discover something fascinating. Whether you're exploring prismatic patterns of consciousness or floating in calm pools of color and rhythm, Brain Candy is a neural playground where scientific insights are wrapped in layers of playful exploration. So, find a cozy spot, pop a candy, and tune up your brain.
All right, and now since you asked for it, here's my dumb AI video. I don't know if I'll
Brain candy, sweet and bright, flashing colors day or night. Twinkle, twinkle, lights in the air, feel the calm everywhere. Brain candy, light up your brain, tickle your thoughts like sugar and rain. Breathe in deep, let worries fade. Brain candy's here, wellness made. Wiggle brain candy, brain candy.
Maybe I'll let you.
I'll let you watch the rest of that. I'm trying to go for like a 90s Nickelodeon vibe. This is a discount code. It's up for MetaQuest. And if 350 is too much, I can also give you a key. If you go to the website, there's a form you can fill in to ask for keys. I'm happy to give them out. This is a QR code for the website. And that's it.
Stand over here, and we'll bring all the other presenters back. Thank you so much. Very good. Let's go over this way so we're on camera. And John, come on up. We're going to do some Q&A. And can I get a round of applause for the amazing Q&A? All right, so I'm going to flip this to the next thing. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in. I'm going to check. Let's see, what do we got here? All right, we got 15 questions, and I like to do these kind of rapid fire, okay? So yeah, we're a little bit over at 8:10, so we're going to do them quick. All right, first one for Nicholas. Can you share more details about the client expectations and how you manage the deliverable process?
Whoa.
Yeah, in 10 seconds.
Okay. The client expectation was to make something that honored the original experience as true to life as humanly possible from an art historical perspective and also from the original design of the gates. So we had to do it unembellished, no gimmicks, nothing. Managing the deliverable process is like
That's
maybe a much longer
that's the next
conversation.
time.
I don't even know how to touch on it because it was a monster.
Yeah, we're gonna have John back, I think, in 2 months or so. Okay, Nicholas, sorry. Next question is for John. Is the software only available for students? Can I not download it on my headset? I can answer this for you. It is the consumer version is available on the Meta Store.
Correct.
Another question for John. Are you looking to expand this beyond tennis in the future?
No.
Okay, John, does the tennis VR have an accessibility setting, or is it a one-size-fits-all?
Sorry, I don't understand.
If you're handicapped, can you set it? Is there like
Yeah, there's a lot of settings, so and that's really part of Meta. So you can set it in a stationary boundary. You can make it so that it's fully active. So it's up to the individual user to set up the experience of how far they want to run or not run at all.
And can you describe the STEM component?
Okay, so the STEM component consists of 40 modules that we've written, which consists of video using professional coaches and some super players. It consists of quizzes, and then is linked to parts of the app. So the idea is that a student can look at a video, do a quiz, do some practice, and then play.
How often did people run into motion sickness when playing the demo?
Never. We haven't had anybody with motion sickness, and I think that's one of the strengths of the game from the developers. So we did 6,000 people in 2 weeks, and nobody got ill at all.
I can vouch. I'm very sensitive to VR motion sickness, and I played it a lot, and it's great.
Wrong business.
That's right. For Ophir, actually, let me read it. Sorry. My company settled with an early internet troll. I expect the same type of trolling will happen in XR space. It sounds like this product could be used to exploit patents. How can your product help producers and developers?
Well, that's a long question. I'll try to keep the short answer. Trolls will always be there. If we can make patents better and start earlier, we dramatically reduce the risk of stumbling upon someone else's IP on the one hand, and being able to, trolls can harass you and try to invalidate your patents if it's a weak patent. If it's right well, not just fast and early, but well, there's less likely for them to win. And the unique approach that we have of how we write a patent, like no other patent attorney can do manually, we do that in view of everything in front of us, all the prior art. So our success rate so far in getting patents granted is almost 100%, which is way higher than the best patent law firm.
Do you typically stop at the provisional stage, or do you normally follow up with the full filing?
That's a great question. Yeah, we go all the way through a full patent application. Actually, after we file the provisional, the system keeps track on a daily basis to see if there are new publications, and you get notified and asked about, hey, we found something new, can you comment on that, so that we will be prepared better for the non-provisional. Once the time comes, after roughly 10 months, before the 12 months deadline, the system will ping you, ask you to come in. You'll have a quick chat with Leo again, just to verify the claims and the use cases that it generates. It does all the figures and file the non-provisional application for you as well. And if you are more into patents and you know about PCT and national phases, we handle that as well. One last thing about the non-provisional. The cost of the non-provisional is known to begin with, and it includes also all the examination costs. Usually what will happen with the patent attorney, once the patent examiner starts reviewing the application, he will have objections, and you will need to pay your patent attorney for every such transaction thousands of dollars. Well, it costs nothing in our platform because we can minimize the amount of office action to one or less, and the system automatically handles it for you. So no extra costs.
And are there protections in place in the system to protect my idea from putting my idea into the system?
Well, that's actually the most common question. How secure is the system? So, a few elements. First of all, my personal background is from data governance. So, data security for me is a very important item. And all the information that is shared by the customer to the chat is in a secured silo, protected. We take pride in the fact that we never use customer data to train the LLMs. So the LLMs, the AI, is basically trained only on public published information. This is something that is only unique to our system. If you try to use, for example, GPT to help you with patents, good luck. Your information will be out there for everybody to use. So very high security in terms of communication, storage, LLMs, and all the data is in the US. I know that some are critical about that. So we have that checked as well.
Okay, moving on to Brendan. Back in the 90s, was there doubt that VR would take off at that time, and was that a big concern for you?
Yeah, you could, if you were part of that ride, you definitely sensed it as people started vanishing. the consumer price products never materialized at a level that had quality to it. So I think a bunch of us saw that this was not a consumer level solution. Having said that, there were plenty of industries training other industries that did quite well starting with it.
Back to Ophir. What's your opinion of the advantage of a patent versus copyright for an EdTech VR platform? A law firm with a lot of experience in the EdTech field indicated that copyright and trademark might be a better strategy for protecting IP.
So in the world of IP, intellectual property, there are quite a few tools: patents, trade secrets, trademarks, copyrights, and they all differ from each other by what level of protection you get. Now, yeah, you can claim copyright even if you haven't sent officially to the patent office, which is great, it's free, but the level of protection you get is limited. Trademark, yeah, it can help you definitely to protect some elements, for example, the logo, the brand. These are great, but if you have a key element or unique mechanism, you won't be able to do that. A lot of startups, especially Israeli startups, will say, sure, we have trade secrets. Here's a really short story. And I heard that so many times. Two founders started a company, had a great algorithm. They said, well, sure, it's trade secret. We don't need to publish that or go for a patent. 5 years later, join the company, a brand new developer, straight out of college. He sees that piece of code, says, wow, that's great. I need to share that with the world. Oops. And I personally know at least 3 companies that had that in the last 3 years. So yeah, there are different levels of protection. I think that if you have something substantial that you can protect with patent, that gives you the higher level of protection.
Back to Brennan, how much did the virtual IO dev headset cost in '95?
Pretty sure that was actually pretty expensive. I think it was between like $500,000.
David, can you target intended results based on the settings, or are there results unique to each individual? And one setting typically mellow and another integrated?
Broadly, yes, but everybody's very different. So different people are going to get different effects from different intensities and different scenes.
This is actually one of the questions I had when I tried it. Is there a recommended time to allot yourself when testing if different patterns work or don't work?
I think I'd say it takes about 30 seconds to a minute to sort of entrain to one scene, and then looking at the analytics, a lot of people are spending 10 to 20 minutes for full sessions.
Ophir, is it worthwhile to file patents for consumer software like mobile apps?
Well, after 2011, there were a few cases in the Supreme Court, it started with Alice May, etc., that discussed whether abstract idea is patentable. And this threw off the entire software industry. In 2019, the Patent Office changed the way they examine things, so software usually, and all of a sudden you see a lot more software-related patents. I personally believe that this is important. In most cases, you would like to protect your software, algorithm, etc. with patents. It's easy to do so, and it's very rewarding. Just to give you an example, Apple versus Samsung case for the original iPhone, there were 2 patents there that that let Apple win $1 billion back in the days from Samsung. One of them was a design patent about the look and feel of the iPhone, but the other one is what's called the rubber band effect. When you pull down a list of refreshing jumps back, this is a software algorithm patent that was worth at least $500 million.
David, I think I know some answers to this, but what medicines work well with brain candy?
Strobe lights were actually used in early psychedelic research. There's an amazing quote from Stanislav Grof where it's like the first time I did LSD was actually in a session where there were strobing lights in his eyes. And I was trying to track down that quote for this, but substances that affect your visuals are significantly increased by strobe lights.
Doesn't awareness of patents increase liability if your product is found to infringe on existing patents?
Another very common question, thank you. No, it doesn't increase liability, it just increases the penalty. So you will hit the wall eventually if you infringe. Now, whether it will really hurt you because you knew that in advance, usually the court gives the plaintiff 2 or 3 times the compensation if it was done willingly. But even if you didn't know, you will still pay a lot. So for me, and what I'm trying to tell everyone, it's, you know, the fact ignorance is not a risk. If you don't know, it will hit you. If you can know at a very early stage and cost you it's very affordable and very fast, do it. What do you get to lose?
One last question for Ophir. If I'm patent pending, can your system still help review the patent that was filed and see if something can be made better?
Changing existing patent is problematic always, especially because you don't have a lot of time to play with. If it's more than a year, it will be priority to a new patent. If it's still being examined, then we can change the claim as part of the amendments. Our system can definitely help with that. Catch me later and I'll try and do it.
All right, one more final round of applause for the amazing. Thank you so much.